Hi, and welcome to Beyond the Barracks, the podcast where service ends, but the story begins. And today I've got the legendary podcast host of the Old Para podcast. Welcome, Chris Binch.
How you doing, mate? All right?
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, got the worst bit over.
Yeah, that's the bit. We just talked about that. That intro bit is the worst bit. But no,
Yeah.
look, thank you very much for having me on. I love what you're doing. Anyone that's pushing out podcasts and highlighting what veterans do and the struggles faced by former military personnel gets my vote. So no, hats off. Looking forward to getting into it, pal.
Yeah, brilliant. So you're not often on that side. So what? And I'm sure there's loads of people who want to hear about what the voice behind your podcast does or did. So what did your sort of early years look like?
I'm not too dissimilar to a lot of people that join the military. I had a good upbringing. There are bits from my childhood that I will need to address at some point, but I haven't for various reasons. But I've not publicly spoken about them or addressed them as they should be addressed. So that's another topic for another time. I had a good family. My parents, mum and dad, are still alive. I grew up in a suburb of Nottingham, sort of a bit rough in places, I'll say, on the edge of a place called Bestwood that was quite well known for a couple of gangsters that went down for murder. They ran the kind of whole area around there. So there was kind of rough stuff going off. I was a bit of a pain. I had kind of I'll come on to it later with ADHD, but as a kid, I had undiagnosed ADHD. It wasn't sort of known about back then. So I was labeled the disruptive child, kind of easily led, disruptive, that kind of stuff. So through secondary school, I got in quite a lot of stuff. I was expelled or suspended, from primary school for actually setting someone on fire. So now, by my current employment, it's a bit of a kind of weird thing that I've gone into, but it sounds a lot worse than it is. I chucked a box of matches at someone, landed in a coat pocket, and they caught fire. It wasn't like I deliberately tried to torture them, but yeah. Trouble found me. I got involved in quite a lot of violence through my teenage years. A lot of fighting. I think it was part of the culture back then, way before CCTV and stuff like that. Groups of lads going out, getting in fights. And then it kind of accumulated. I was around 16, 17, and I got involved in an altercation with sort of a group of older guys, if you will, and I ended up getting glassed in the face. So I had 16, 17 stitches around my eye, broken nose, fractured jaw. And it was a bit of a turning point. My dad was a bit like, right, you've got to make changes now or you're going to end up, if you carry on, in prison, down the wrong route. So what you're going to do, so to speak. And I'd had a bit of an interest in the military at sort of 15, did a bit of a week with the local regiment, Worcestershire Foresters. Ironically, I live literally a stone's throw from where that training camp was back then. And then, I just found myself at the Army Careers Office, and before I know it, I was signing up for the Parachute Regiment without a clue, really, of what was to come.
Yeah, so that was my next question, why the paras? But was it a case of, in the old days when they were like, yeah, you were going to do this, son, and you just went, yeah, okay, and sort of, or did you have any idea?
Because I'd done a week with the Worcestershire Foresters as a 15-year-old, I'd done really well. I think I got best overall student out of about 80 Worcestershire Foresters, kind of young cadets, as it were. So they really wanted me to join the Worcestershire Foresters. That's what I was going to do as we headed to the Army Careers Office with my best friend. And he's insane. He's still my best friend now. We've known each other since we were 6 years of age. He's bonkers. But we kind of walked in there and he was like, I've read about this thing called the Paras. He was like, what, do you fancy it? And I was like, well, what do they do? And he was like, well, they jump out of planes, a bit fitter than the normal infantry, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, if you reckon it's a good idea. So the guy on the desk was actually a guardsman. He wanted me to join the guards because I was tall. I was a big lad. I've always been a big lad. But yeah, we were both adamant, right, Parachute Regiment it is. Whisked off down for Prac about a few weeks later. And kind of sadly, we got split up because I had an injury. He broke his ankle jumping off a library roof when we'd had a few beers. Seemed like a great idea. Um, and yeah, I landed on a bush. He went straight through the bush and broke his ankle. I had a few knee problems separate from that. So we ended up getting separated. He went to one para. I went to two para. And that's how it all come about, really.
Yeah, that was kind of my next question. I thought it was two para you were in. So you guys got to see quite a lot of operations because I think we both sort of joined the same time, didn't we? And it was quite quiet, and then the next thing, everything opened up, and there was Bosnia, Kosovo, all that type of thing. I think you did Northern Ireland and Bosnia, no, Macedonia, Sierra Leone, and then yeah. So what sort of impact has those operations sort of had on you, like
Um,
good or bad?
Well, I wouldn't say they're experiences, aren't they? I see everything. Like I'm really lucky in that I've never really struggled with any of the kind of effects of anything I've done, and I don't know why that is. I don't know whether that will be something for later that may catch up with me. But I've had a lucky escape that I don't suffer with anything. But those early tours for me, Northern Ireland, they were great for kind of bringing you on as a soldier, and kind of getting out there and honing your skills as a young paratrooper. And they made me grow up very fast. I was 17 years of age when I joined the military. I didn't have the best or easiest ride through depot. I kind of did P Company 3 times in 6 months, failed twice, and then passed on the third attempt through injuries and stuff. So, it was kind of once I'd passed and gone to battalion and started going on these ops, it was like, yeah, I've made it now. Or so I thought. But obviously, you're still kind of learning your trade. You're kind of, you're involved in a man's world as a 17, 18-year-old when you're still really a kid. So, I mean, it was a steep learning curve. And you did grow up very, very fast. I've got to say, out of all the operations, I did Afghanistan. I did the early Afghanistan tours. The probably the best one as far as in out potential for it to be a really good operation was Sierra Leone. I got called off leave. I was on the lash with my best mate who I've just talked about in Tenerife. And we got a call saying you've got to get back. You've kind of been mobilised. Can't tell you too much over the phone, but you need to get back. So I went from on the piss in Tenerife to patrolling in Freetown, Sierra Leone within 24 hours, which was just like, wow. And it was a hangover from hell when it's 40-degree heat in Freetown in Sierra Leone. So
Yeah,
that for me, because it was in out, sort of shy of 4 weeks, a lot of potential, brilliant for soldiering. You didn't shower. I know that's not a good thing, but you were proper in the field for 4 weeks, and all you did was be a soldier, and it was great. I thought that was the best thing I did in my time. As far as operations go, I did Belize, I did Canada. They were brilliant, but that, as far as ops, was brilliant, and I think that I took a lot away from that as a soldier.
yeah. That was the day when you used to get pager, wasn't it? And you were on kind of spearhead, and we used to call it spearhead in the signals. And it bleeped, and you were like, "Oh my god, is it a test or is it real?" And then that fixed.
We didn't have the look of having a bleeper. That was obviously you must have had a bigger budget than us. We just
Signals.
yeah, fair one. No, we just kind of found out through the grapevine. Someone let us know, and then
Okay.
my dad let me know. He was like, "The army have been ringing up. You're trying to get you back." I was like, "All right, okay." So
Brilliant. Yeah, I missed Sierra Leone. I wasn't on spearhead that day, but my regiment went. So yeah, I kind of know what it's like. To come off leave, definitely. So when did you ever go back home?
what? As in from when I was in Colchester?
Yeah, did you ever go back home, or did you just sort of stay within the barracks?
Well, you had like two lots of people. The early days when I was in Aldershot, because I was in Aldershot for 18 months before, which was obviously the home of 5 Airborne Brigade before it became 16 Air Assault, and we moved to Colchester. So, I love Aldershot. I've got fond memories, but at the weekends, everyone dispersed and usually went home. So while I was in Aldershot, I tended to go home. And then we got to Colchester, which is a bigger town. There's more pubs, clubs, a bit more, nightlife. It was, so what became what was known as a block rat. You had block rats and homing pigeons. Homing pigeons every Friday. We'd all be hanging out the windows, cooing at them as they kind of jumped in their cars to get back on a Friday to the hometowns. Whereas I just tended to stay in Colchester. I was a bit like, well, I can be in the pub for 2 o'clock, instead of driving home and stuck in traffic. And so, yeah, I kind of stayed in the block a lot during my time in the military. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've kind of been back and met sort of people, and it's kind of changed. It's a lot more, as you say, homing pigeons. That seems to have changed in the military. There's a lot more finishing on a Thursday, and they're off for the weekend, come back late on a Monday, which is a little bit sad, really, because it's you miss out on that camaraderie, I think, and family.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So your experiences during the military and, personal development and that, do you think it gave you a better worldwidely view when you did come out?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt, I still draw on experiences from my time in the military, and I don't claim to have done millions of years. I did several years. I did 7 years, or just short of 7 years. But that period from 17 to 24, when I was in the military, I draw on those experiences to this day. When I'm doing stuff that might be a bit taxing in my current role, I I kind of draw on the hardship and the times, and I know I'm capable of doing. Does that make sense? I'm capable of pushing myself further because I've been able to do it in the past in my time in the military. And there was times in the military I've done exercises, I've done operations where sleep deprivation, as we all have, where sleep deprivation and you're cold and you're wet. So when things get hard throughout life, I do genuinely draw on those experiences and think, yeah, you've still got it. It's in there. You can push through that. And I take those experiences into everything I do. I back then I put everything into whatever I do. And I don't think I'm speaking any different from a lot of kind of military people. Everything I do to the best of my ability. If I'm not engaged in it, then it won't really and that's part of the ADHD as well. You kind of, when you're involved in something, you get hyper focused, and I will make it work at all costs. But I do believe that was part of the development from being in the parachute regiment for 7 years back when I was 17 to 24.
Yeah. Well, there are definitely years when it shapes you, isn't it? And I think the majority of veterans were all really young, so I think that's why we sometimes sound a little bit cookie cut with our mindset, which isn't a bad thing because it's a great mindset to have, and it certainly serves us well, doesn't it? I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, I wouldn't change anything. I might have. And I always kind of say, I was in from 17 to 24. If I was in from 24 to maybe 35, I think I'd have done different. I'd have been on more courses. I certainly would have had a crack at SF selection. I'd have done more, but I was in at an age when I was kind of discovering, well, I'd already discovered alcohol, as we all did back then at early ages. I mean, it's different nowadays, but, I was discovering as a 17-year-old pubs, females, nightlife, holidays, so that was my focus, and the army came very close second. Whereas if I was in later, I think the army would have come first, and I'd have been on every course known to humankind. But it is what it is, and I left for various reasons, which we'll probably come on to. But yeah, I think if I was in at a different time, things might have been a bit different. That's all.
Yeah, age does change you where you're gonna approach things, definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when you decided then to take the leap to Civ Div, what were the kind of major decisions of it? Did you know what you were going to do, or did you just sort of jump out of it and go, oh crikey, I've got to pay my own bills here, and you know.
Well,
Can't go to the med centre anymore when I want a biff chit.
Yeah, yeah. You know what, Gina? The thing is like I've cuffed everything in life, right? Never, not everything I've ever done's never had any thought for or anything. It's just been completely off the cuff, and it's either worked or it hasn't worked. And leaving the military was no different. I know you have to, obviously, but I had it in my head that I was going to sign off. I'd heard sort of obviously after the Iraq conflict 2003 or during the Iraq conflict at this very start, I was in a lucky position where I got wind of the close protection market, and I was like, okay, and not randomly, no one had really kind of was aware of it. It was new, it was brand new. It was closed off to usually special forces that worked in sort of Africa or Central America, and then all of a sudden there was this need for kind of large numbers of girls and guys to go and work in the close protection industry in the Middle East, predominantly Iraq. So I got wind of it. I thought, oh, okay. So I signed off, um, and then it started sort of to get close to the time. And I was applying to join the fire service at the same time back then for the first time. Um, so I left, had my interview for the fire service, was unsuccessful at the interview stage. And then, I kind of ended up getting an interview for a company to work out in Iraq. So I was like, right, I'll go and do that. And that's what I did. How it came about, it was more luck than judgment. Right place, wrong, right time, and off I went. And I was very lucky to work in that industry, as a lot of people will say, probably the golden era where the money was good.
Yeah,
It was a lot less red tape with stuff, and it was a good time.
yeah. It was decent money, wasn't it? And there was some really interesting jobs that you could do. But
Oh yeah.
how did it? You know, how what were your experiences over there, and how did it feel? Maybe not to have the backup of military support when you're on an operation, because I do feel when you first get out there or go on something without military support, you start sometimes you have a bit of a moment where you think, oh, when things get real, I've not got the British government behind me.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it didn't start off overly well. I've kind of publicly spoke about this before. I went out with a company that I won't say the name, but I went out to work for a company. I was there a week, and
Yeah.
I ended up getting in a disagreement with an ex-Australian SAS guy, and I ended up punching him several times. So it didn't necessarily start off very well. Um, and someone did point out to me that during this tussle, when we ended up on the floor and me on top of him, grenades had rolled out of his vest, with pins in. Don't worry. This is
Yeah.
what genuinely. This is a
Or
true
it'd be
story.
a different story, yeah.
Yeah, it could well be. So yeah, it was a bit. I was a lot. I was very hot headed back then. I don't even recognise that person anymore. I'm a lot more mellow as you do as you age. So it didn't necessarily start off overly well out there. I'm not going to lie, but I was lucky. That got put to bed. I came home and I landed a job with a brand new company called Blue Hackle at the time.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I remember that.
yeah, very, very. Well, they were in their infancy when I went out there. I was one of the very first team members to go out, and I remember rocking up at Baghdad International Airport, and someone handing me an AK-47 and going, "How do you know how to use that?" And I was like, "Well, kind of." Like, right, Sam, we'll load it up outside, jump in the wagon, and that were me. Vehicle from Bayap down route Irish into Baghdad, and that was it. It wasn't kind of now a lot of companies then later on had to do induction
Yeah.
courses. Someone handed me an AK-47 and went, right, this is what'll happen. Give me a quick set of quick QBOs, quick battle orders. This is what happens. Actions on, we get hit. Blah blah. I was like, right, okay. 24 years of age, bloke with a beard that rocked up and gave me this AK. So yeah, it was odd.
Yeah.
And like I say, it wasn't necessarily the way that you'd known from the British Army. Um, but again, one thing the British Army, teaches us all is we adapt very, very quickly to the situation that we're faced with. So very quickly, I adapted to that world. Um, and yeah, I was very, very lucky to work for three or four very well-known companies out there. Some good contracts, some absolutely looking back bonkers contracts that I can't even believe I did never, let alone walk away from. But yeah, good times, good times.
Yeah. Was there any particular moment that that you really remember from those days of your anti-piracy and all that type of missions going on around there?
Well, I remember like the Iraq stuff, and I've spoke about this before on podcasts, and I jokingly said that over the course of my career, I have missed through luck being in the right place when something's gone wrong. And this has gone on from a very young age in the military, throughout the close protection industry. So there was occasions when for working for Blue Hackle, we were involved in training part of the guard force early days. I was up and down Route Irish in soft skin vehicles 6-7 times a day, fetching vehicles, fetching kit and equipment, just in like a soft skin Ford Mondeo with tinted windows, shemag, beard. That's what we did, picking up weapons, picking up other vehicles, that sort of thing, which in itself now seems crazy because it was the most dangerous road in the world at the time. People were getting hit on it. US call signs wouldn't travel up it, and there's me in a Ford Mondeo with a beard and an AK-47. So that's true again. So on one particular occasion, I've spoke about this. I went to sign in loads of Iraqi kind of local nationals that we were training that day, and we always used to collect them from the outer checkpoint because the US soldiers wouldn't let them in. So we had to go and collect them at the outer checkpoint, which was run by local national Iraqi army. On this particular day when I got there, they'd been let in by the Iraqi local nationals to the US call sign checkpoint, which is about 100 meters back in the green zone. And as I was signing them in, a massive vehicle-borne IED hit the outer checkpoint, killed 17 people, forced the explosion, took us off our feet. On any other day, I'd have been at that checkpoint and been in full blast of the vehicle-borne IED, but I was not. They let them in, and this continued, I kind of swapped drivers on a particular day on a contract, and someone threw an RKG-3 armor-piercing grenade at the vehicle I should have been driving, and it severely injured the driver, which would have been me. So it's just, this went on throughout, and I think someone's genuinely looking down.
Yeah, someone's looking after you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the moments I will take away the most, I worked on a contract called Op Tourist for Aegis. It was a very, very small contract. You probably heard of the Op Matrix contract or the Matrix contract that Aegis run for years.
Yeah.
Massive contract. He'd had a very, very small contract on the side. One team that drove around every street, MSR, road, lane, you name it, in Baghdad, filming, had a camera on the middle vehicle and filmed for US intelligence. And we drove around at 30 mile an hour. I've been everywhere in Baghdad. I've been deep inside Sadar City, which used to be called Sedan City, places that probably only SF or, if even SF have ever been in there, just filming for US intelligence. And as a result of that, we got hit quite a lot of times. Quite a big ambush, 2008 Boxing Day. My vehicle took multiple hits. My rear gunner, Matt, he kind of ended up shooting 3 or 4 insurgents. They kind of rooftops firing down on us. So it was an interesting contract. And, we kind of walked away from that. And then the thing that got me the most and why I moved away from that industry, if I'm honest, was my little boy was born in 2010. And a couple of weeks prior to that, someone had thrown an RKG-3 armor-piercing grenade at my Land Cruiser. It had hit one side of the vehicle, and it never detonated. The pin had been pulled, never went off. Dinted the door exactly at kind of waist height, so it'd have ripped us in half if it had come through. And it never, the US call sign we met on the way in went and sort of blew it up in place as like an unexploded ordnance. And they basically met us in the cookhouse that night and said, "You want to put a lottery ticket on, you do?" He says, "Because there's no reason why that shouldn't have exploded." And that, it wasn't even that bad, but it was a bit like, right, look, you've really kind of pushed your luck out here now. It's probably time to pack up, go home, try something different. And I'd had a good run at it. I'd made some money, and my little boy was born at the same time. So I went home and never looked back.
Yeah. I think, as you said, that period over there for contractors was an extremely crazy period with so much happening. And things that probably will never get, if you like, as an opportunity to do again. But there was so much injury and death from it. It was
Yeah.
incredible, and it's kind of not reported on because we were private contractors. So yeah, and I think having your child definitely probably gives you an epiphany moment that what the hell am I doing here? I've made me coin. Let's get out of it.
Yeah, your perspective changes, doesn't it? And you've got. And I know. At the time you're with someone as well, but it's an adult. They understand. But when a child's involved, you suddenly think, right, I need to be there for that child. You think of their feelings, and suddenly, as a parent, like I think we're all kind of a little bit selfish at times, and then you become a parent, and you have no choice to become unselfish because suddenly it's not all about you or your partner, or it's about this bundle of joy. And and that's not speaking for everyone that hasn't got children. I'm not saying you're selfish because you don't have children. Your perspective on life, on everything, kind of changes when you have a child. And yeah, I think that was the case for me. And I literally at that point came home with no intention of going and doing anything like that again. And I was home for a couple of months when my little boy was young. And then I got wind of the anti-piracy. But the anti-piracy, to people that don't understand, that is a lot safer than the work in Iraq. And the rotations were a hell of a lot shorter. I kind of worked a month on, month off, so yeah.
Yeah. So you found your sea legs.
Not initially, no. I'm not going to lie. It was a struggle, and I always joke about the most dangerous part of that job was when you were trying to board these vessels off a pilot boat off the coast of Sri
Yeah.
Lanka
And
in
it's like,
monsoon season. Well, 1 minute the steps are there, the next minute they're about 5 meters above.
yeah,
It was absolutely horrendous, and I've been across the Indian Ocean in monsoon season, and it's rough when the Filipino crew that are on them ships about 10 months a year are throwing up. The seas are rough. I was all right by that stage. I did actually get my sea legs, but you can't sleep because you have to wedge yourself in bed. You can't eat because your food's all over. So, it's a tricky, as well as the sort of environment you have got. It's good when it's like that because you're not going to get attacked by pirates because they can't be out in their boats, their skiffs as they call it. But at the same time, the conditions, the sea's trying to kill you, pirates are trying to kill you, everything's trying to kill you. And if you're on some of I've not named the nations, but certain nations' ship, even the food that they cook is trying to kill you as well. So,
yeah,
true story.
yeah. No, it really. I should have realistically joined. I'm looking at two warships now directly ahead because I've done a lot of work with them in the past. But my dad was merchant navy, my brother Royal Navy, so I was the traitor by joining the army.
I
But
bet they don't let you live that down, do they?
no, yeah, senior service and all that rubbish. Well, yeah, so you had some interesting times in Anti-Piracy then. So how long did you stay with there, and was there anything
Um,
anything you want to
you know
share?
what? The anti-piracy was absolutely brilliant for travel. I mean, I got the company I worked for had a villa in Sri Lanka, so you kind of you'd land there, you'd stay there on the beach in a villa, waiting to pick up the ships. Sometimes you might be there too. The money was less while you were in the villa, but it was still very good. It might have been a couple of $100 a day while you're in the villa. So, and then when you were out, it was increased massively, $550, $600 a day when you were on the ship in the high risk zone. So, the money was really good again. And you got to travel to all sorts of countries. I mean, I got stranded in Madagascar for 5 days, which is not a country you kind of go to really on holiday. I mean, you can, but it's not on the list usually. And I ended up stuck there because of bad weather, just outside Antananarivo. Yeah, just balmy, Tanzania, Kenya, all over the place when you kind of down that coast of Africa. sort of Saudi Arabia, India. Yeah, so interesting times. In the 3 years I did it, I saw pirates maybe 4 or 5 times, and that's the truth. One particular occasion fired warning shots at pirates. Now, I've been quite open about this. I'd identified weapons. I was a team leader at this team, so at this stage, so I had my own team. The rules of engagement were fairly clear at that time that if you identified weapons and they were a threat because of the position you were faced, you were more than sort of you were allowed to use lethal force. Do you know what I mean? If the situation they point at weapons and start firing and stuff. So on this particular occasion, I identified weapons. Weapons were pointed. There was no firing from them, but I would have been perfectly within my rights to fire, use lethal force. I didn't. I fired warning shots, and to this day, I'm thankful that I did, because I don't have to live with the fact that I've taken another person's life in that situation. I fired warning shots. It did enough. They turned around and probably went for a ship that didn't have security or didn't have armed security on. So, that there was a few occasions like that, but it was, I think, probably the early days when it first sort of kicked off and started out. I didn't have weapons. I did about 8 or 9 trips or so with no weapons. It was spears, petrol bombs, razor wire around the ship. So as you can imagine, moving through the Babel Mandate Strait as you go up into the Red Sea, where most of the pirate attacks happen, it was a bit twitchy because you've got no weapons against pirates with AK-47s. So, yeah, interesting for the first. But as soon as we got weapons and SLRs, we used the Belgian FN, which is a modified version of obviously of the SLR. You felt a lot safer.
Yeah, I bet you did. Yeah,
Yes,
instead of a water cannon, you've
oh,
got
yeah, water cannons, petrol. We used to get the chief engineer to make us Molotov cocktails, petrol bombs, and then in the hope that against AK-47s,
yeah,
really going to have a massive, So
no,
yeah, interesting times.
yeah, yeah, and I love the fact that it is really interesting when you do these jobs, don't you? And you end up in countries that you just would never have wanted to maybe end up in, but then you have some really nice experiences and get to see different parts of the world, I guess. What was the most unexpected country that you actually liked, or that you felt kind of at home or had a nice experience in?
The most random one, and again, I have told this story because it's random, but I swear it's 100% true. There's a lot of stories I tell, and I say to people, I know a lot. I know a lot of people, and I have quite a big following. No one's ever called me out for making it up because
Yeah,
it's true. But
yeah,
I ended up in, like I say, in Madagascar, and I was with 2 French Foreign Legion guys, a guy called Yusuf, and a guy from Slovakia. Yusuf was from Morocco. Absolutely top bloke. He was actually in, I believe, in Somalia with the French Foreign Legion around the time of Black Hawk Down. So he had an extensive 22-year career with the French Foreign Legion. I think he was my team leader or I was his team leader. I can't remember because we both did team leader at different points. But anyhow, we ended up in Madagascar and we went into this random nightclub in Madagascar. There was the security guy on the door had a slung Uzi submachine gun, and I'm on and I was the only kind of white person in this vicinity, and I just felt very very uncomfortable. Obviously, like a British soldier would. Once I'd had a few beers, I was fine. I was dancing with everyone, but I was just very aware to start with, like. What? I'm in the middle of an African country, Madagascar, that's not really where people genuinely don't really see a lot of white people. People were staring at me like they've never seen a white person
yeah,
before. So it was very kind of surreal. Absolutely lovely people, you're kind of dancing and everything, but it was just one of the moments where you think, how have I ended up here? How is this kind of, and that was a weird moment for me at one stage. So yeah, kind of bizarre, but again, you end up in a lot of Middle Eastern countries, Oman, Saudi, um, Yemen, the coast of Yemen and stuff like that. So yeah, brilliant for kind of And one of the bizarre things for me, which is it's not really, it was rocking up at the Suez Canal and boarding a ship at kind of one end of the Suez Canal and actually seeing the Suez Canal, and it's in the middle of a town or a city, and the ship's traveling up the middle of the city, massive tankers up this Suez Canal that cuts through the city and just goes through the middle of the country. It's the bizarrest thing. That I kind of, at the time, I was like, that ship looks like it's driving down the street, you know? So that was weird. There was all sorts of stuff. It's probably too much to list and not enough time to tell you them all.
I know. We need to meet up. Incredible, incredible experiences. Yeah. So eventually, you thought, no, I need to come back to the UK. And is that at the point you? I mean, was there a specific incident, or was it just I need to grow up, get back, stop exploring the world and having all this fun, and get a real career?
Yeah, again, you kind of do that sort of stuff. I don't. It's a single person's kind of job. It is, and it does have untold effects on sort of your kid. And by this point, my daughter had been born. My lad was like 3. My daughter had been born, so I was a bit like, I don't want to be that parent that's not there with them. You have them for a reason and stuff like that. And then, well, now the teenagers, they don't give a shit about seeing me now, but that's the way it goes, bless them. I've just took them to school this morning, actually, and I get a few grunts off them, when they're not on the phones, 15 and 13, as you can imagine. Yeah, I'd applied for the fire service again for the 3rd time. I was 33, and it was a bit like, it's a bit do or die now. This will be my last attempt. And ironically, it was the least amount of effort I put into the process for the fire service. I did shockingly bad on the interview. And I got a letter saying you've been successful. And I was like, what? Is this for the wrong person? And basically they ran 3 sort of courses of 12. And I obviously scored that bad in the interview that I was picked for the 3rd course. I think that's how it went. Don't quote me, but obviously I figured if you did really well on the interview, you were on the first course. If you did not so good second course, and if you were literally like, well, we've got to fill the spots, you're on the 3rd course. And I think that's how it was. And I was sat on a floating armory off the coast of Dubai, waiting to pick up a ship, and basically I got an email pinged through, said, unfortunately, we're not running a 3rd course. So I finally got a job or an offer, and then they turn around and go, we're not running a 3rd because you'll have to apply again when we recruit again. And I was like, you are kidding me. So I decided to take, I was obviously annoyed, I was gutted, a lot of mixed emotions. So I decided basically to take a long 10-week ship, get some money to come home for a bit and search for a different career. This isn't the first time. I tried being a prison officer in between working out in Iraq as well. I did that for 12 weeks, didn't fit. You name a job, I've tried it. Surveillance, all sorts of stuff. But the fire service was what I wanted. About 6 weeks into this 10-week ship, I got a phone call on a sat phone saying, you've been successful, from my partner at the time, saying you've been successful. They've changed their mind. You've got to be back in about 2 weeks' time for a medical. And I'm on a 10-week ship, and I'm thinking, oh, God. So I spoke to my dad on the sat phone. He was like, use me as an excuse. Tell him I'm ill. Make up some sort of compassionate. I was like, are you sure? He was like, do it.
Yeah.
So we had a bit of a kind of conflab, and I ended up coming up with a story, and they let me get off. But it cost me $5,000 to get off in Saudi Arabia and to come back. And basically, the company turned around and said, oh, don't worry about it. We'll pay. They were based in South Korea, a brilliant company. They don't know this. So when they see this, it is what it is. But it's a long time ago now. They said, we'll pay for you to get off and your flights and all your visas and stuff. But when you come back out to carry on with the anti-piracy, you've got to pay us back. And I was like, yep, sound. Obviously, I never went back.
Let's hope they're not listening to this then.
Well, that's allegedly anyway.
Yeah, allegedly, yeah. So you're still in the fire service today. So how do you find that? Have you got any you're going to have stories. I know you're going to have stories, but what's kind of your most memorable moments from your service
Well, I
so far,
don't.
fire
Well,
service?
I don't go into too much detail as such with certain incidents for numerous reasons.
Yeah.
But I kind of, again, as we talked about earlier, the whole being in the right place and avoiding kind of dangerous situations by the grace of God, or luck. So my first ever, so as the fire service works, you do like a 12 or 15 or whatever week training course. Now it was bizarre for me because it's like being back, a watered down version of Army Depot. So I was suddenly 33 years of age, been doing all this mercenary, anti-piracy, Iraq stuff, cutting around with a beard, AK-47, thinking I'm cool, and then all of a sudden I'm parading on with 12 other brand new recruits, with bald shoes, getting inspected on a line, thinking, what am I doing here? I
Yeah.
don't know what I was expecting. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, and suddenly doubling around everywhere, getting thrashed, getting screamed at. So it was a massive learning curve, but thoroughly enjoyable. Um, I was so fit when I joined the fire service because I've been training on the ships 3 times a day because there's nothing else to do. And I just kind of ended, I kind of started the fire service, and I always joke about this. Out of all the jobs I've done, probably the fitness levels for the fire service are quite, are reasonably high and stuff because it's a kind of stressful job. You've got to be fit, but it's probably the least fit I've had to be considering the other jobs I've done. Paratrooper, the Anti-Piracy. I work for a lot of companies that had to do training courses of fitness tests and stuff. So yeah, I was fit as a butcher. I got 14.7 on the bleep test, and 2 weeks in doing hill sprints, I really badly injured myself and tore my groin muscle to the point where they literally said, you either crack on with a course or you're off. And I was, after all this time, 3 attempts, 10 years, I'd finally got in the fire service, the least amount of fitness I'd ever done, and I tore my groin on a hill sprint session in training. And I was like, So I had to crack on, take myself up, limp through the course, and that has caused untold amount of dramas with me now. I have no end of issues on the left-hand side of my leg, hamstring tears, calf tears, all because of that injury. But it is what it is. I cracked on. But the pinnacle moment for me, probably my first ever. So you wear diamonds on your helmet for two years when you arrive in the fire service, and this is to signal that you're a probationer. So you kind of like your babysat, so to speak. And the first ever incident I went to, house fire, which was after 3-4 days of being in the service, there was a house fire. I went in as a part of a BA team, and we didn't make an error as such, but you're supposed to go and find the fire, and it looked like the fire was coming out of the top bedroom. So we went in, made our way to the stairs down quite a long hallway when we perhaps should have gone left because the fire was in the kitchen. So we should have gone left, round the living room and through the kitchen door into the kitchen. We didn't. We went straight down the hallway to the bottom of the stairs, found the stairs and thought, because it was smoky, you couldn't see. And as we turned around to come back through the living door, there was a massive explosion, and a bag full of cylinders and aerosols had exploded and blew the kitchen window 20 foot up the garden, and smashed, blown the kitchen up. And if we'd have actually gone right as we should have done, gone left and gone the right way, we'd have walked through the kitchen door straight into an explosion that would have probably seriously injured or even killed us. So it was one of them incidents again. I was like, this being in the right place thing, followed me into the fire service. That was my first ever house fire. So I was a bit like, okay, this is quite a dangerous job then, really. So yeah, and I've had multiple incidents now that I've been in 13 years. I've had house fires that have made my helmet kind of blister. I've burnt the top of my ears where it's been that hot. I've had jobs where you've almost had to pull out because it's so everything's been on fire. Obviously, road traffic collisions, you cut people out of cars on a regular basis. So it's interesting. It's a great job. Everything's different. Every day's different, but you do have to have a brain that can't take stuff home with you. You have to be able to leave it behind. And I'm really fortunate that my brain just switches off to it, and I don't carry that kind of stuff with me. And like I say, no one knows when you get to a point when your glass is full that you do suffer. But fingers crossed, touch wood, I've been good.
So yeah, so interesting, all of that. Like, I never knew the diamonds. I thought they were like lieutenants or something. Or so how do you decompress? Is it fitness like a lot of us do?
Yeah, like as I talked about before, the ADHD and that. My brain, if my brain's not busy, then I kind of stagnate, and I kind of feel myself going not downhill, but I can sense when I start to take a bit of a nosedive with stuff. So for me, busy Christopher is good. I keep myself busy, and whether I box for years at heavyweight. I fought last year for the last time. I am far too old for it now. I can't do it. My body won't allow me. So I boxed for a long time. That kept me busy. It took up a lot of my time boxing in my spare time. Obviously, I do the podcast. I do also. I walk a lot. I'm a big fan of the outdoors. I think it's great for mental health being outside. Uh, step away from a screen. I do obviously spend a lot of time behind a screen, as we do, because that's the nature of podcasting or being on social media if you want to promote stuff. But it's important to take that step away. I live right on the edge of Sherwood Forest, so I kind of get out in the woods. I get out early. I'm an early riser. I'm up early in the morning, do my cardio around the woods. And I tend to be on various fitness plans. I've done 2 already. I'm on one now. I'm 4 weeks into a shred for, as you can tell,
Yeah.
into a shred for my holiday in for my 45th birthday in end of July. That's when the plan finishes. So I use these little things. They're not for everyone, but I use them to keep me focused. I have little goals. I have little things that's how I do. That's how I decompress, and that's how I switch off, focused on other things.
Yeah, yeah. So your podcast, obviously, you were inspired to start doing it, and we all have a journey and end up doing various different things. But you're a massive advocate of mental health and well-being. And what sort of challenges or experiences has the podcast brought to you, which has been in a positive way, that you, because your podcast definitely gets out there and has a big voice, and will be helping people to come to terms with stuff.
Yeah, I hope so. And it's weird because I think people assume, because I do what I do with the podcast, I must have struggled with post-traumatic stress or mental illness before. And I've genuinely not. I've been fortunate and lucky not to struggle with that kind of stuff. For whatever reason, I don't know the reasons, but I've been affected by it in different ways, in the way that I know a lot of people, whether that be friends, colleagues in the military, close protection industry, the fire service, that have struggled and sadly taken their own life as a result of the struggles, and not and I've been totally unaware of it through, I don't know, through just not knowing enough about it, just for being too, like a lot of people, maybe too sort of into your own life and not paying attention. I don't know, but I know I've lost a lot of friends or colleagues, like I say, across the years through suicide and mental health. And I thought, right, what can I do? For a number of reasons, what can I do to keep my brain busy as well? What can I do to help others? You get to a point in life, Gina, which I think we talked about before, when you feel like I'm content. I've got a nice house. Financially I'm okay. I'm not loaded, but I'm in a good position. I've worked my way up to that point. So now I've got the opportunity. I'm in a position where I can give something back to others. So that was my thing. What can I do? How can I raise awareness? And it doesn't cost me a lot to do it. It's just my time. I set all this up. My studio is in a loft. I'm dead honest about it. If you turn this camera around, the rest of it's my partner's dressing room with clothes all up everywhere. But I've got a little corner of the loft. I do a studio. I've bought a second-hand webcam, a second-hand microphone, and off I've gone. And that's how I've gone with it, And I want to reach people and get people talking about it. And I have had criticism going, oh God, another voice talking about this and talk about. I'll never apologise about it, because you can't have enough people raising awareness. And I've moved into different things now. It's not just veterans or emergency services. If I can have, because of the following I've got, which is not massive, but it's getting bigger as the years gone on, and the reach. If I can have an impact in helping anyone raise money for charity, share, but just by sharing a link, it takes 2 minutes to share a link. I say to everyone, and I'll say the same to you now, you want your podcast sharing, tag me in it, I'll share it. Means nothing. It's a second of my time to share and get your help you promote and bring other people with you. It's not about doing it all yourself and just being like, look at my podcast, it's better than yours. I don't get that. I don't. You get a sense of enjoyment with helping others and bringing people along. I've had Trev Court kind of help me along. I've got a lot of time for Trev. He's really kind of helped me promote the podcast as well as others. Chris Frawl's been another one. I've helped him with, promoting his kind of row. And I know you've had him on the podcast, your podcast as well. So I just think, you surround yourself by good people that are willing to help you. Use social media for a form of positivity rather than the negative crap that's all over it. Positive stuff, promoting stuff, positive mental health, positive actions, and just help each other and be a nice person at the end of the day,
Yeah, definitely. I love that. I love the guests you have on and the message you're getting out there, and yeah, we've all got haters for some reason, whatever that is. It's their problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or just try and ignore it if you just gotta not read the comments, I guess, and just read the positive ones. But yeah, definitely, I'm on the same song sheet, that's for sure.
I think we all are. We all are. Anyone that moves into this kind of industry, and I've got a lot of time for helping others with it, and everything else.
Yeah.
You can never have too many people kind of raising awareness. Your audience will be different from mine. It's slightly different with different people that will, listen. I think, we talked before when you kind of asked what my opinion would be on it. And I said, I think you'd be brilliant because, again, it's just another avenue with your experiences that will reach out to people and they'll go, oh, you'll have your own audience and stuff. So, again, I think it's brilliant, mate. And
Yeah.
like I say, I'll support anyone I will with it because there's 8.5 billion or 9 billion people on the planet. There's plenty of love to go around.
Yeah, you gave me that push, which I'm thankful for, definitely.
No problem
So,
at all.
kind of starting to wrap up. I love to ask this question, but did you have a role model or a superhero when you were growing up, or have you got one now? We all have them, I think. Sometimes we just don't identify them till later in life.
I've got a few as you've moved through life, but I think I don't. Unsurprisingly, the big one for me will always be my dad. He's 73-year-old now. He's 73 years of age now. Bless him. He's starting to slow down a bit. I remind him of this on a regular basis. But the man's a legend. He grew up in absolute poverty in the 60s and 70s. His mum was a single parent, no benefits. I've heard the stories. Holes in clothes, no Christmas presents, that sort of thing. So he did everything possible. He worked 100 hours a week to provide for me and my sister growing up, and I'll never forget that, the opportunities that he gave me, the life he gave me, a massive cost to him that, the graft he put in. And even now, I still, as a 45-year-old, I'll ring him up and go, Dad, how do I do? And he'll be like, I'll come round now and bring me tools. And you're like, cheers, mate. So he will always be, and I don't know if he knows it. I tell him, about whether he listens, I don't know, but he will always be my kind of ultimate hero. And then, secondly to that is kind of my current partner, Hannah. She's a firefighter as well. We've been together 6 years. She's absolutely amazing. She's helped me identify the ADHD. She's helped me understand my own brain, and kind of basically helped me realize who I am. And I've only managed to do that in the last 6 or 7 years, thankfully to her, and I think thirdly, is my best mate who I talk about. He went on down a special forces journey, and just what a guy. He's been massively supportive in everything I've ever done. He's there constantly trying to help me back it, do whatever. We've been best mates for the best part of 37 years. you know, so there's nothing we don't know about each other. He lives in the next village across. We see each other quite regularly. Sadly, he's struggling a little bit due to a brain injury that he kind of suffered while his time with UK Special Forces. Um, so yeah, we're kind of working through that, and I try and support him as much as possible. And it's another reason why I do the podcast, you know, because I think he's still fighting for compensation from the military, which again makes me sick. You know, you serve the country, and I've had a lot of criticism going, well, you knew what you were getting into when you joined the military. Why would you expect any treatment? We do, but it's what we sacrifice.
Yeah.
You know, we know what we're getting into. All we expect is fair treatment when things go tits up. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They're the three
No,
heroes.
they're a brilliant three. Yeah. Excellent. So where can we find you online if people haven't heard of you?
Well, I'm all over every social media. You type in the Old Paratrooper podcast into Google, it comes up. I'm on Facebook. Old Paratrooper podcast on Instagram, TikTok. The biggie for me is obviously YouTube. I'm on there, the Old Paratrooper podcast. But again, you type it into Google, I'll come up. I appreciate the follows and the subscribes. It all helps getting the messages out there and kind of spreading the positive stuff. And again, anyone wants to get in touch as to be a guest, like I take away from someone, Frankie's pod, Andrew Dunn, he's a top bloke. He's actually sent me a theme tune the other day that he's yeah, you know, and I was dead. I was like, this is what I mean about surrounding yourself. He didn't have to do that. He created it. He was actually devastated, bless him, because he says, yours has come out way better than mine. Like, oh well. But he's a top bloke. And yeah, it's just a case of I forgot where I was going with that, Gina. But yeah, I'm all over social media.
Where you are, yeah.
So Old Paratrooper podcast. Give me a follow on there. I'd massively appreciate it.
Brilliant. So finally, my podcast called Beyond the Barracks. So what does that mean to you?
For me, I've said it quite a lot. I think Beyond the Barracks is just realizing that once you step away from the barracks, you've not got that support network around you. And it's just, you've got to be there for other veterans because suddenly you're surrounded. I lived in a block, probably the same as yourself, with other like-minded veterans that you saw day to day. If you were bored, you wandered to the next room and had a brew with your mate. All of a sudden, you walk out that camp gates beyond the barracks and you think, oh, I'm going to see them all next week. And then it's just not. You're isolated. You know, and all of a sudden you think, fucking hell, you know, it was 8 years before I went back and on a reunion to see people, and it flies. And that first year is a struggle. So just be there for other veterans. I'm always willing to chat to absolutely anyone. If I don't know you, you don't even have to be a veteran. Look, I'm all over social media, as I've said. Message me, send me a message. I will chat to anyone if they're struggling or they just want to chat. I like chatting, Gina. You've probably noticed that.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we both do it. I like that answer. That was perfect. So thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for giving me those words of wisdom and advice about, you know, all the little bits of the downside of podcasting and the upside. So it's been a pleasure having you on. You were the first person I asked, probably going to be maybe the second episode that I put out. So thank you so much, and
thank you for having
me.